What differentiates between fiscal responsibility, frugality, and cheapness? This is something I spend a lot of time thinking about. Overall, I tend to be fascinated with human behavior and especially socioeconomics. The short answer I've arisen at is context, and so I guess if that's all you wanted to know, you can click off this video now. But context in itself is very complicated, and so too is the longer answer to this question. The longer answer involves examining things like subjective normality, personal priorities, ethics, personal values, comfort zones, income disparity, and so much more. A millionaire who only orders off the dollar menu and asks for a cup of tap water on the side is insultingly cheap. But for somebody who's on food stamps, a $1 sandwich and a cup of water is likely all they can afford, so it's a very necessary form of financial responsibility. But what if that millionaire really just wants a small sandwich and a cup of water, and it has nothing to do with saving money? Does that mean that they're being financially responsible and reasonable by not ordering more food than they really want to eat? See? Context. On a larger scale, balancing the need to spend responsibly and save diligently with the desire to live a full and meaningful life is something I've been working on since I was old enough to understand the concept of money. Growing up poor, I had to learn at an early age the difference between a need and a want, and that just because somebody else has something doesn't mean that I can have it too. And very quickly, I had to decide to either be okay with that or live a life full of jealousy and bitterness and resentment. And thankfully, I did choose the former. The result was that I grew up to look at money a lot differently than most people do, but in truth, I was well into my 20s before I realized that my normal is not everybody's normal. Because by understanding the true value of money and what it represents, and more specifically the opportunities that it can present or take away, I very rarely, if ever, felt that I was missing out by not having the things that everyone else around me has. I think that as you grow up, it's only natural to aspire to have all the things you feel you never had before. For a lot of people, that's the freedom to go out and party, or the ability to buy themselves all the clothing and gadgets and toys that they never had as a kid. For some people, it's really just the ability to go shopping without somebody standing over your shoulder yelling, "No, put it back!" And I get it, it makes total sense. And those things were very appealing to me too, but not nearly as much as the thing that I felt I was missing the most growing up: financial security. Before, when I mentioned learning the difference between needs versus wants, I left something out. It wasn't just needs versus wants. It was needs versus really needs versus wants. It's being a kid and recognizing that my mom needed a new winter coat, but then our dog got sick and his medical needs consumed all of our extra money, and so his bills got paid for and my mom continued to be cold and wear an old tattered winter coat for several more years because we just couldn't afford to cover both things. So suddenly the really need becomes the need becomes the want, and the wants, they don't even exist. I think that when you grow up without money, you become comfortable with discomfort. Sometimes so much so that you don't even realize how uncomfortable you are. And this can manifest in many different ways, from going through so many winters without a good coat that you don't even realize how cold you are, to not recognizing when you're experiencing workplace abuse, because quitting your job simply isn't an option, so you just get used to being mistreated. When I first started working as a teenager, I decided I wanted a different life for myself, a better life for myself. I wanted to be able to have my own place, a place that was truly mine, that I loved, that I was comfortable in. I decided that I wanted a car, not a fancy one, but I was just so sick of chasing after buses on unplowed streets all winter long. I wanted a job where I wasn't being spoken down to and micromanaged by people whose intellectual peak was in the 6th grade. I wanted a comfortable, peaceful, dignified life with all of my needs met. That was my want. But earning very little money at that time, and with no concrete plans for the future, I was well aware of the fact that I was first going to have to experience more discomfort before I'd find that happy spot. So from age 17 to 26, I spent very little money outside of what I absolutely had to spend. I helped out with the bills at home, I took over the financial responsibilities for our dog, who at that point was very old and very sick. I put gas in my car and slivered out about $20 a month for fun money, but otherwise I saved pretty much every dollar I could get my hands on, and I excluded myself from a lot, until I was eventually able to do the thing I had dreamed of for so long and buy myself a house. Well, as it turns out, owning a house is not the financial security finish line that I hoped it would be. I had fantasized about finishing this marathon, checking the box, doing the thing, beating the final boss in this game we called life, and getting myself to a point where for the first time ever I could maybe not worry so much about money. But in reality, this was only the start of the race. Now I had a mortgage, and property taxes, utilities, insurance, groceries, all of these expenses I had to be responsible for, and I needed a couch, and a coffee table, and a garden hose, and a toilet plunger, and all of these mundane household things that I had never even given 2 thoughts to before. But boy does it add up quickly. So that scarcity mindset that I was hoping to be able to let go of, now I actually had to double down on it. If I buy this thing, I won't have enough money for that thing. I need this, but I need that a lot more. Even being a homeowner, even achieving that thing that so many people only dream of, meant continuing to have to make sacrifices. But sacrifices are an interesting thing because they're entirely subjective. One person may feel that a big sacrifice is being made by not having something, but for someone else who has no interest in having that thing, they don't feel like they're missing out on anything by not having it, so no sacrifice is being made. Life is interesting like that. There are a lot of people who assume that I'm being too frugal or maybe even cheap by not having a TV or a Netflix subscription or other things of that nature, but the truth is the reason that I don't have those things has really nothing to do with finances. I just don't care about them. As of fairly recently, and for the first time ever, I'm beginning to find comfort and contentment in my life. More specifically, I'm beginning to find balance. Balance between time spent working and relaxing, balance between money spent and money saved, balance between covering my needs and my really needs, but also allowing myself a few wants here and there within reason. The interesting thing is that if you were to look around your home and really scrutinize, you'd probably find that the vast majority of your belongings are things you could live reasonably comfortably without. There are a lot of things, big and small, that really just make sense to own and that make day-to-day life a little easier, a little more pleasant, a little more efficient, but in truth, if you didn't have them, you'd be just fine. Living without them wouldn't have much of a negative effect on you whatsoever. The people who owned this house before me were, in my opinion, painfully cheap. They lived here for about 5 years, yet there wasn't a single toilet paper holder in any of the bathrooms. Every single light fixture only had one working bulb, as though they didn't want to spend money on buying new light bulbs, or maybe they were trying to reduce their energy bill by living in the dark. I don't really know. I'm also fairly certain that they rarely, if ever, changed the furnace filter. While not having any toilet paper holders in the bathroom sounds ridiculous, the truth is that simply putting the roll of toilet paper on the back of the toilet tank doesn't actually have that much of a negative effect on your life at all. And while having half-functional lighting is far from ideal, it's not going to kill you. The same could be said about a lot of things. The fact is that there's a lot we could comfortably go without if we had to, but the sum is greater than the parts. Comfort and discomfort. None of these things are monumental at all on their own, but added all together, along with the general level of filth and damage in this house, made for a dismal and depressing place to be. It's kind of like how having a small mess in one room isn't really all that bothersome, but having a small mess in every room quickly leads to a feeling of overwhelm and like you're living in disarray. I can live a perfectly full and happy life without a TV or a Netflix account because I truly just don't value them, but something I do find a lot of value in is having a setup to listen to my records, so I recently decided to invest in one. Likewise, I can survive just fine with my old beat-up couch, but having a new one would be a lot nicer and a lot more comfortable, so I'm looking into it. I'm not really interested in going to expensive restaurants or bars or nightclubs, but I love going to see live music, so I allow myself the opportunity to go to a handful of concerts every year because I don't spend money on those other things that I don't find value in. See? Balance. Spending money on things you don't really care about just because everyone else is doing it is wasteful. But depriving yourself of the things you need and can afford just because you don't want to spend the money is cheap. Context. The fact is that none of these things matter much at all on their own, but altogether the presence or lack of them can affect your quality of life. We all have different financial circumstances. We also all have different priorities and interests. My priorities will always be to make sure that my really needs are covered first and foremost, followed by my regular needs, the boring mundane stuff that just makes day-to-day life a little bit nicer, even if I technically could live without it. And then, and only then, can I ask myself what I want. And I mean what I really want. Not just what I think I want because I saw that somebody else has it, not just what seems interesting to me in the moment because I'm bored, but what will bring true value and true joy to my life. What will actually fulfill me and make me happy. And the answer is not much. I really don't feel like I need a lot to be happy, especially not a lot of material possessions. And I think that for most people, if they really took a moment to reflect, they would find the same. But when there is something that I really truly want, that I really believe is going to bring me joy, as long as I can afford it, I invest in it. And to me, that's not cheapness, that's not even frugality, that's just common sense. But hey, what do I know? As always, this is just my 2 cents, this is just the world according to Nicole, and I would love to hear your perspective. How do you differentiate between cheapness, frugality, and fiscal responsibility? Where do you draw those lines? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video at all, if you found it at all interesting, valuable, or maybe even just entertaining, please go ahead and hit that like button. It takes you like half a second and it actually really does help out the channel. Likewise, please consider subscribing if you haven't done so yet. You can follow me on Instagram at according_to_Nicole. If you'd like to support this channel further, you can do so at patreon.com/accordingtonicole. Other than that, thank you guys so much as always for watching. Take care. Can't wait to read the comments. See you next week.